Chapter 6. The Effects of Possession. Earthbound entities, whether discarnate or incorporated, seem to remain exactly as they were moments before their deaths. It's as though they have been freeze-framed. Throughout their stay in the physical world, they do not change or profit from anything they experience. They have all their previous attitudes, prejudices, addictions, skills, interests, fears, and hang-ups. If their deaths involved physical pain, this continues unabated, even for decades. If they were anesthetized or drugged by alcohol, prescription, or illicit substances before they died, they feel spacey and out of it for as long as they are earthbound. Possessing entities who committed suicide continue to feel desolate regardless of what their hosts experience. They remain abjectly depressed for as long as they are earthbound. Degree of possession. The possession itself can range from nearly total, in which case the original inhabitant is almost completely replaced, to a very minor influence. Some of the factors that determine the extent of the possession are the intrinsic strength of the individual compared to that of the possessing spirit, and the conditions that weaken the possessee, like stress, drug abuse, illness, etc. The more the afflicted abdicate control of their consciousness, the greater the influence of their possessors. If the possessed drink, especially if they get drunk, they are unwittingly giving control to the entities. Blackouts are examples of total, though temporary, surrender of consciousness. That is why others say, he's a completely different person when he's drunk. He is. His role has been reduced to zero during that time. Age when possessed. One of the most important factors in possession is when it occurs. A great many of my patients were possessed as very young children, especially following hospitalizations for such surgeries as tonsillectomies, or during severe illnesses. Picking up a spirit at that tender age and growing up with it on board made it nearly impossible for the people possessed to discern the boundaries of their own personalities from those of their possessors. I hear complaints like, "I've always had a violent temper," and "My mother told me I had headaches even as a toddler." When the possession occurred in the earliest years, the possessed later is often afraid to have the spirits leave, fearing that there won't be anything left, or "I won't know who I am," or "I'll be lonely." The possession weakens the child's aura and creates a vulnerability to further possession. My findings indicate that if people are possessed early in life, by adulthood invariably they are multiply possessed, each entity additionally undermining the integrity and protection of the aura. On the other hand, if the possession happens when the individuals are older, the before and after differences are more clearly differentiated. In these cases, patients make comments like, "I've never been the same since the accident," or "I always was a happy child and popular in high school. Then 3 years ago, I started to withdraw and sank into these black moods." Especially common are remarks like, "That's just not me. I would never do such a thing, but I did. My husband says I'm like two different people," or "I think I have a multiple personality." In the majority of cases, there is a blending of the personalities, and the onset of possession is only vaguely perceived, if at all. Possession by spirits of the opposite sex. When people are possessed by spirits of the opposite sex, their hormonal systems appear to be affected, always negatively. Some cases of premenstrual syndrome, PMS, often cleared up immediately with a successful depossession. In many cases, one reason for a diminished sex drive was this type of possession. Possession by spirits of the opposite sex often results in tension and distance between marital or relationship partners. Frequently, the possessors dislike the spouses or even hate them. Since the possessed accept these emotions as being their own, havoc ensues, wrecking relationships. In one of my ongoing cases, a female patient who was severely possessed by an extremely angry young male drug addict became increasingly hostile to her husband. Their relationship deteriorated to the point of separation and ultimately divorce, in spite of my advice to the contrary. Entities of the opposite sex are often the cause of a great deal of confusion about sexual identity. Homosexuality, transsexuality, and transvestism are the extreme results of this kind of possession. Range or effects. I think that's a misprint. I think that's supposed to say range of effects. Physical symptoms. The very act of possession itself produces fatigue in the individual, sometimes exhaustion. All the possessed patients I have treated noticed a lessening of their energy level. Usually I hear, "I'm exhausted by the time I get home from work. I go to bed at 8:30, but I used to be up until 11 p.m. I conceptualize this draining of energy as a result of the possessing spirits having very weak energy systems of their own. They're literally siphoning off their host's energy. I explain it to patients as, It's like one battery taking care of the electrical needs of 1.5 cars. The entity doesn't have a body, so he doesn't use as much as you, but his turmoil and thoughts require energy, so he draws off yours. Spirits seem to bring an imprint of their physical bodies exactly as they were at death. This affects the living organism of the possessees. According to esoteric theory, the spirit's lower astral bodies interact with the etheric bodies of living people, resulting in a blend of the two. This creates a blueprint for the physical bodies and later manifestations of some of the former physical characteristics of the possessors. Therefore, possession can result in physical symptoms of all kinds, among them pains, most frequently headaches, including migraines, PMS with edema, water retention, cramping, lack of energy or exhaustion, insomnia, obesity with resultant hypertension, asthma and allergies, etc. A female patient, Sally, suffered from severe hot flashes that had come on suddenly, even though her menopause had started several years before. She was troubled to the extent of having to change her nightgown and sheets several times every night because of profuse sweating. Even worse, she had to discontinue sleeping with her husband, as he generated too much additional heat. We discovered that she had recently picked up a menopausal spirit who, fortunately, when apprised of her true condition, left without hesitation. Sally was immediately freed of the symptoms, much to her husband's delight. Another female patient reported that her sciatica, from which she suffered for more than 15 years, cleared up following a depossession. The identity of the possessing spirit wasn't clarified, so we can only assume that he or she was a person who had a sciatic condition. A chronic neck pain and depression were eliminated completely when the spirit who had hanged himself in prison was taken into the spirit world by his loved ones. My patient felt comfortable, physically and emotionally, for the first time in years. Some patients complained of feeling stoned, hungover, or drunk for no logical reasons. It was only after successful depossessions that they realized who had been responsible, and they were finally freed of these symptoms. Possession by a spirit who died as an elderly person often results in symptoms that are common with older people, like blurry vision, aches and pains, and general tiredness. One woman in her 20s had sought medical help for several years for intense abdominal pain and feeling old and decrepit. She was not relieved of these problems until we did a depossession. Her possessor was the former owner of her home, who had died in my patient's and her bedroom of cancer of the intestines at the age of 77. As I cautioned earlier, it is imperative if you experience a physical problem to consult your family physician. Depossession should not be a substitute for good medical care.